Hello, Meet Edgar community. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. And I am thrilled that we have Chris Mercer here, who's going to present to us how to fall in love with Google Analytics. Now, one of our favorite things to do here at Meet Edgar with these webinars is connect small business owners. So right over here is a chat box. We'd love to know who's here, where you're tuning in from, and what industry you're in. If you see someone you want to connect with, go ahead and share your social handle so you can do so. That is enough from me. I will go ahead and pop into the chat and hang out with you guys and hand it on over to Chris so that we can go ahead and get started with the webinar. Take it away, Chris.
Looking forward to it. So Megan, pleasure. Happy to be here. We are all going to be about falling in love with Google Analytics by the end of this. As Megan mentioned, my name is Chris Mercer. Everybody calls me Mercer. It's just there's always another Chris in the room. So feel free to call me Mercer as well. It's our job to help you learn how to use tools like Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager and Google Data Studio to measure marketing, right? And that's why we started measurementmarketing.io to help you to do that. So that's kind of what we focus on. Now, I've been on, maybe some of you, I don't know if I've seen you or not, maybe Social Media Examiner or Traffic and Conversion, some of the places that are out there. So I speak on a bunch of different podcasts. Always looking for more podcasts, to be honest. If anybody has any, I'm happy to help. When it comes to this training, any training we do, we are always focused on the one thing. Because Google Analytics, let's face it, can be a little frustrating, can be a little overwhelming at times. There's a lot to it, and we want to make sure that we are not trying to do too much at once. So this is your goal. And I think, to be honest, I have the easiest job because I do this stuff all the time. I know this thing. I've got lots of practice with it. It's you, on the other hand, that has a tougher job because you have to pull out a win from this, right? Something that you can use, that you can take action on to improve from a skill set perspective. So that's your mission, is find out one thing that you can take from this training that you can apply to what you're doing in your day-to-day activities to improve results. Now, what might that be? There's a few. One, we're going to talk about a mindset, and hopefully this will be a one thing for many of you. It's a shift in how to think about measurements. We're going to talk about a framework that you can use. And this is a huge, huge secret. If you're trying to use Google Analytics, but you don't have a certain framework in mind, you're not trying to go at it with a certain purpose, it's going to be really, really hard to use. It's going to bat you around. Maybe you've done that. You jump in analytics, you see a bunch of stuff, you get confused, you're like, I'll come back in a couple of years. That happens. It's because you don't have a framework. We're going to help you with that framework. And of course, we're going to help you to answer questions like what's working and what's not. And when you can do that at that point in time, you really will start falling in love with Google Analytics when you find out just how easy this stuff can be when you know your way around. All right, so with that, let's start with the mindset of what this is. Now, I'm going to show you a few photos here. What's happening here? We're all social people. There's a conversation going on. There's a conversation going on here. There's a conversation going on here. What about here? An obvious conversation, a transactional conversation, some of our favorite conversations as marketers. Right now, this is back in the before days, right? Where we could all go out and about and meet and greet and have these conversations. This is how things were sold. What about here? What's happening? There's still a conversation happening here. And this is what a lot of online marketers forgot. A lot of digital marketers forgot this, that the website now is having a conversation with the user because there can't be another person there, right? It doesn't work like that. So the website's having a conversation with our users. Now, when you're face-to-face, it's easy to listen to somebody. It's easy to pick up on stuff. It's easy to see their eyes. It's easy to hear a tone in their voice. Well, how's the website supposed to do that? How are you supposed to do that when you've got the website between you and your user? Well, that's where this whole concept of measurement marketing comes into play. So measurement is really, obviously, two words, measurement and marketing, really comes down to what measurement is you listening to their side of the conversation. It's how you hear their side of the conversation. And you use tools like Tag Manager and everything else to do that. Marketing is how you respond. It's how you say something back. It's how you keep the conversation going. Okay, so again, in measurement, it's how you hear what they're saying using Tag Manager or Google Analytics, Google Data Studio. When you're looking at your ad platforms and you're seeing maybe your Page Insights report or whatever the thing is that you're looking at that's giving you those numbers back. What those numbers are representing are the different behaviors that the users had with your site. It's the conversation that your users are having with your site, right? Marketing, again, is what you do to speak back to them, to keep the conversation going in the direction that you want it to go. And that's where you're changing your ad targeting, you're changing your messaging, right? You might be changing some of the copy points, something like those. Maybe you're changing your offer completely because the offer doesn't work. So that's the marketing side. And you have to have that process, right? Because there's a conversation happening. And we want to make sure that we are both listening and responding to that conversation. That's what measurement marketing is all about. This concept of listening to what's going on, right? We have to listen to what the website's getting from the users. We have to adjust the website so that we keep the conversation going, listening and responding. Now, how do we do that? That's kind of the mindset. And hopefully that's a one thing for many of you, because you're like, yeah, I didn't really think about that. But the website really is like this little salesperson that's there to do a job. And how do you know if it's doing the job? That's why you do measure it. You got to make sure you have that. Now, how do you go about doing this? Let's assume you're like, yes, I'm on board. I need to make sure I'm measuring stuff. And I get the conversation thing now and looking at it in that way, right? Because we can start asking questions like, is the page doing its job? Is the website doing the job it's supposed to get done at this point in time? You can measure for all of those sort of results. Now, how you do that, use a framework. And now this framework that I'm going to give you, this is so simple to start using. So I want to make sure I emphasize it's so simple because it's easy to use. But I also want to emphasize because it's simple does not mean you should skip it. Very important steps here. So this is part one of this framework. It's something called the 5 pillars of measurement marketing. The first is plan. Now this sounds trite. It sounds like, of course you plan. But this is the thing that most people skip, because if you've ever gone into Google Analytics without a question in mind first, if you've ever gone to analytics to sort of see what you can see, if you've ever been like, oh, what are people using my site? And you jump into analytics for that, well, that's not really with the plan in mind. So with the planning stages, it's really 3 things in the planning stage, and you write these things down. First is you have to list out questions that you're trying to answer. Okay, kind of an obvious one, but you want to make sure the questions that you have, you're trying to get answers to. Second is you go, okay, what information will I need to be able to collect to make sure that I can answer those questions? And that's where you might set up something like Google Analytics, or maybe it already has that information. Maybe Facebook has that information, but you sort of think through that. So questions am I trying to answer? What information do I need to collect to get those answers? And then this is the secret question. This is the one that will save you a ton of time. If you're the marketer, it'll save you a really huge amount of time if you are building reports for people. Action. Question first is, what question am I trying to answer? Information. What information do I need to get answers to those questions? And this is the most important part, still at the planning stage. What actions will I take based upon the answers I get? So for example, you might say, well, I wonder what our opt-in rate is. I'm going to have to measure the number of people who see our page views on the first page of the opt-in page itself. And then of course, the number of thank you pages. That will tell me my conversion rates. That's the information I need to collect. What actions will I take? Well, if it's less than 25%, then I'm going to work on the ad and see if the ad is congruent to the offer, see if the offer maybe needs to be improved. If it's higher than 35%, I might try to scale traffic because it's a really good opt-in rate. I'm getting the results I want. So I already know the actions I'm going to take based upon the numbers that I'm about to see. Right? So that's the important part of planning, this KIA process. We call it QIA: question, information, and action. Then you do your build out. That's where you go into Google Analytics and start setting stuff up, or you're using Tag Manager maybe to collect some information now that you needed to use. All this sort of stuff happens there, right? Build out. That's where you do that. Maybe you set goals in Google Analytics, right? Something like that. Then reports. Now, reports is where everybody typically starts. You jump into something like Google Analytics because you want to see the reports. When you're looking at Google Analytics, you're typically not in the back end in the admin section. You're looking at the front end, the report section, right? But unless you've done the planning and you've built it in a way so that it's going to be able to tell a story to you, the reports kind of are a little hard to read sometimes, right? We'll talk about ways to improve those today. But the reports is where you get your answers, right? Answers to the questions that you asked in that planning stage so that you can now take the actions you want to take. Then, this is the other step that people skip: forecasting. And this part's a little scary, but this is where instead of saying, well, here's what happened last week, you start saying, well, based on what I know, based on the behaviors that are happening, based on the conversation that the website is having with our users, here's what's going to happen next week. And you forecast out those results. And you say, okay, well, I'm going to have 100,000 impressions of our ad, and 1% of those are going to click through. And of those 1%, 20% are going to opt in. Of those 20%, 7 of them are going to buy at $100 a piece. And that's how we're going to make $700 next week. And you do whatever that forecast is. And you kind of put yourself on the line a little bit. And that's a good place to be because you're going to learn a lot doing that. But you forecast the results, your near results, based on what your past results have been. Then you measure against your forecast because you're going to set up measurement, right? These reports, everything else we're talking about, tools like Google Analytics, and then you can optimize. And that's the thing that everybody wants to try to race toward. They always want to know, like, what actions do I need to take? That's where the actions really start happening, optimization phase. But it's tough to know what to optimize if you haven't done all of the other steps. But imagine if you had a forecast that said, oh, my opt-in rate should be 25% or between 20 and 35%. And then you look at your opt-in rate and it's 15%. It's pretty obvious, okay, it's not quite working the way you want it to. Or you look at drop to rate, it's 45%. It's a little high, but maybe we need to bring in some more traffic, right? There's natural actions there. But if you looked at a conversion rate on your sales pages and you know conversion rate maybe might be 3%, is that good or not? Right? Depends what the journey was. Why is it only converting at 3%? What if it was warm traffic? It should be converting at a lot higher percentage coming through. How would you know what to adjust? It's because you would look at your forecast. You would say, well, was it maybe because we didn't send enough traffic? Was it because we sent the wrong type of traffic? You'll be able to measure and do all of that in the optimization phase. So again, the 5 pillars: plan things out, question, information, the actions you're going to take. You think about all that stuff through. It's kind of like a role play. You do all that ahead of time. Then you do your build out where you're setting goals in analytics and prepping Google Analytics so it can tell a story. Then your reports, where you can see the reports, get the answers you need so you can go take the actions you want. Then start to forecast your near results based on your past results. And then you measure against your forecast. That's where you're going to see where you're hitting the mark and where you're not. And that will lead to obvious next steps and actions. That's the optimization phase. Now, part 2 of this whole process is just to remember that this is a journey. So I know I'm covering a ton of stuff when it comes to this. Part of the reason you're going to be able to access and rewatch this again and again and pick up another one new thing. I like training when there's lots of layers to it. But the journey is really this. This is how we teach it at measurementmarketing.io. We have this little ebook created. So here, and I'm going to kind of bring my mouse over, you can see the planning stage that's here. You see the build out stage. You have the reporting, the forecasting, optimizing, the 5 pillars as we go through. Most people are starting out here. When you're in the cave, the world of data is kind of dark for a lot of people. They don't really know their numbers. They see numbers. They don't really trust the numbers, or maybe they got some numbers, but they have no idea what to do with the numbers. And it's like you're wandering around in the cave. So you have lots of people that are in the cave. So what you do is you use the pillars, right? Planning. Notice a little color coordination here. We got planning, building, reporting, forecasting, and optimizing. You use them to kind of light things up and get out of the cave. Not that hard to do. You just start kind of using the basics, some of which we're going to talk about today. So it'll give you a little head start on that. Once you're out of the cave, you're in the valley of visibility. This is where you can look around. You can finally see some things. But what's going to happen is you're going to start asking bigger questions because you can. Instead of just like how many users saw my website, it might be more specific. How many users came from email? How many users came from my Facebook paid campaign versus the Facebook campaign where I just shared a bunch of stuff out there from our social campaigns that aren't really being boosted, right? You can tell the difference when you set things up in Google Analytics. Again, we're going to talk about some of this stuff today, but that's in the valley of visibility. And you go through the same pillars again. So you repeat the process: plan, build, report, forecast, and optimize. Eventually you'll get into the hills. The same thing. You're asking bigger questions. Maybe you don't want to know like how your leads convert, but you want to know which leads are better. Is it people that convert? Are they worth more if they convert on our white paper lead? Is it worth more of a user if they convert on our video series leads? Which type of lead is a better lead for us to go and acquire? You can answer those questions when you improve your setup, right? This is a journey. You go through the 5 pillars again. You said now you're doing it at this different level. And then ultimately the summit, right? Which is where you're asking really complicated questions, but you're getting answers to things that you need because your setups are improving at that point. Now, the way that this journey works, again, the whole point of it is realize you're on a journey, give yourself permission to not be perfect. And just because somebody somewhere is grabbing some information doesn't mean you have to as well. They might be further along on the journey than you currently are. So start with wherever you feel comfortable, but realize, and this is the key, and this is kind of a little hidden subliminal thing here. Notice the transportation modes here. In the cave, you're kind of walking. It's slow. It's a lot of work, right? But you get through it. Then it gets a little easier. You start riding the bike around, right? Riding the bike around the valley. In the hills, it's a car. And up here, it's a helicopter. It's kind of a symbol of how complicated the setups can be. So somebody might have a very complicated, very integrated implementation so they can answer very complicated questions. They've got the helicopter style setup. But if you're in the cave, you're not going to be able to get those answers, at least not yet. Doesn't mean you won't be able to eventually. First things first, though, get out of the cave. If you try to build a helicopter in a cave, it will not be useful, right? It won't be useful. So start with where you are and move forward in the way that you can and realize you're on the journey. And that's the second part of the framework, the very important part of the framework that we talk about, because you need the pillars, but you also have to understand you're going to repeat the pillars over and over and over again to improve your implementation, to make sure that you get better answers to what you're looking for. All right. Let's talk about answers. What's the thing you're really trying to answer? The thing that we get asked about the most anyway. What's working? What's not? That's kind of what everything comes down to, right? What traffic sources are working and what results am I getting from those traffic sources? This is, we hear a bunch. So the reason we cover what we just covered, that mindset, is because we want you understanding there is a conversation happening, and you look at your data a little differently when you look at it in terms of a conversation that the website's having with the users, and the data is just sort of reporting on that conversation, right? Your reports are showing you that. We talk about the framework because you want to make sure that you're following the 5 pillars because it makes everything easier to use. And you're going to get your hands dirty a little bit when it comes to this stuff, but it makes it more useful. And then when you try to answer questions like traffic and results, well, really, it's about trying to organize traffic coming through and realizing like it's not just about looking at all the different stuff that's in your Google Analytics reports. It's about controlling it a little more. It's about going through and giving it a little bit more formatting. So instead of this scattered approach to all the traffic's coming into your site, some of it might be email. You can't really tell. It's a little bit of everything. Instead, you put everything in its own lane, right? Traffic staying in its own lane. You got emails coming through in a certain way. You've got your Facebook share traffic coming, your social traffic coming through in a certain way. And that's different from your Facebook paid traffic. And that is different from the Facebook traffic that other people are sharing for you when they're sharing on their pages and posts. So you can see all this in Google Analytics, and we're going to show you how to do that today. Now, you could also categorize traffic into certain channels. For example, maybe you want traffic that is retargeting traffic, and you want to know if your retargeting traffic is doing its job versus maybe what your cold outreach traffic is, that awareness style traffic or the brand impression style traffic. You can measure for that as well. So there's lots of different things that you can do with traffic in Google Analytics. We're going to show you that today. Just remember, you're going to watch me do it. The important part is that you ride the bike, that you can't watch me ride a bike and expect to be a better bike rider. So it's not going to work. You're going to jump on a bike, you're going to fall off. So instead, you watch me do this stuff, but then you will practice this. Make sure that you practice this stuff because that's how you actually build the skill. And we'll show you again how to do that in just a few minutes. Now, once you have your traffic set up, you need to think about the results that that traffic is supposed to achieve. So this is kind of the goal that you have in mind. That's what we're going to talk about today is goals. Now, this could be e-commerce and all that sort of stuff, a bit beyond the scope of today's training, but Google Analytics will allow you to measure e-commerce results. Sometimes you have to work with a developer. Sometimes it's as simple as turning on some integration, but not everybody does e-commerce. If you're a marketer who maybe is more into content marketing, it's more engagement style marketing, you can still have engagement style goals. So that's why we're going to talk about goals, because that applies to everybody here. There's not one person here who cannot use goals in Google Analytics. So we're going to talk about how to actually set those up. And then, of course, we're going to tie them all together. So this is the fun stuff. This is where we're going to go ahead and dive right in. We're going to take a look at how all this works. So I'm going to bring up Google Analytics. So everybody should be seeing this. Now this is actually our production Google Analytics. This is the one that we use at measurementmarketing.io. And I want to show you like how we actually set this up. And we're going to start with the end, right? Sort of like what it ultimately looks like. So I'm going to come into acquisition reports, and we're going to talk about one report in particular. This is what I call the super report in Google Analytics. I say it's a super report because it is so incredibly useful. This one report will answer 80% of the questions that you have around what's going on in your site if it's used properly. And we're going to talk about that the rest of this training. So you come into acquisition reports, we go down into all traffic, and then we go where it says source medium, the source medium report. Now, what this will do is this will show you all of your different traffic sources that are coming up. So all the different traffic sources sending traffic to your website, and then it will tie those to any results that you already have set up. So we can see here, I'm going to just go ahead and scroll down. You can see here, we've got Infusionsoft email. I've got direct none. I've got Google organic. There's my Facebook CPC. I've got Facebook referral. That's traffic that other people are sharing on our behalf coming through. I have YouTube share. That's stuff that we've done on YouTube that we haven't boosted. So I can see different types of traffic coming into my site. Now, why I like this report is because in one report, it sort of identifies the traffic. And the way you think about source and medium is source is the brand name of the traffic source. So Infusionsoft, because that's our CRM. So we use Infusionsoft. Google, brand name. Facebook, brand name. YouTube, brand name, right? So we see all these different brand names of the different traffic sources. The medium is just the type of traffic coming from that source. So in this case, I have Infusionsoft as the system that's sending us traffic through email. That's the autoresponders and the campaigns that we have set up there. I also see, if you see number 6 here, I see Infusionsoft that's coming through here, but it's different type of traffic. It's partner traffic. It's affiliate traffic. So I can see the difference between affiliate traffic and I can see the difference between our own email traffic because of these things that we're about to talk about, things called UTMs. And I'll show you how to do this in a second. But I can identify these traffic sources coming through. And that's the first thing this report tells you. The second thing this report tells you, and this is this little section here, this little acquisition report section, this is all about the quantity. So how much is it sending you, right? How many users is it sending you? What percentage of those are kind of what they consider new? And then how many sessions? And really, what I really care about, I typically just care about the user number. That's the easier one to play around with. So we focus on the users, which one's sending us the most traffic, right? By user count. So we can see the quantity information. Next to that, in this little behavior section, these are all engagement, right? This is an idea of how engaged did that traffic source, those users from that traffic source, how engaged were they? Now, there are three things here. Bounce rate, maybe you probably have heard that or heard about that. So that's basically, essentially what it means is when somebody comes to the page and they leave. So Google Analytics doesn't have any sort of other measurable hit, they call it. But if Google Analytics doesn't notice anything else that came from that user and they just left, so they came to the page and they left. They didn't take any other action. They didn't click on any other pages. They didn't go to anywhere else. That's called a bounce. So that's all that is. So they came to your page and they left. They bounced off your page. That's sort of where that comes from. So you can see here, bounce rate for Infusionsoft emails, pretty low at 19%. Now, this is important. I'm going to teach you a little bit about how to read these reports. This is a popular question we get, like, what's a good bounce rate? There are no really good bounce rates. There are bad bounce rates. You don't want to bounce rate. And when I say that, I mean this part up here, this top level, this is all the overview, right? So site-wide is what this is showing us right now. So here, this particular bounce rate, this gives me a benchmarks of how the kind of the average of how my site is performing, right? It's in the 30s, and that's perfectly fine. Could be in the 40s or the 50s. It'd be perfectly fine. So it is what it is when it comes to bounce rate. What a problem bounce rate would be is if it's in the single digits site-wide. Occasionally, you will see some pages that are single digits. That's totally fine. But if you see your entire site is in the single digits, or if it's close to zero, there's a problem with your implementation. You would need to work with your team to fix that, or maybe take a look at that. So there is such a thing as a bad bounce rate, which is when it's in the single digits or close to zero site-wide. That's probably an issue. Doesn't mean it always is, but most likely it's an issue coming through. Otherwise, how do you use bounce rate? Well, first thing is I get my benchmark and I kind of go like, okay, roughly speaking, I'm in the 30s, right? Just kind of roughly speaking, I'm in the 30s. Then I compare the different traffic sources to that. And it's all kind of like from a relative perspective. So I don't care that it's 19, I don't care that it's 29 or anything else. I'm just comparing the two. So I'm sitting here going, okay, well, 19% is substantially better than average. So email is better at engagement, right? It's substantially more engaged, which makes sense. It's a warmer audience. It should be. So they're showing that they are more engaged than the average site. I see this direct none traffic. So people that are coming directly to our site. So, our website has a lot of direct none because our company name is measurementmarketing.io. I'm always out there saying, yeah, I'm Mercer from measurementmarketing.io. So people will type in measurementmarketing.io. We get a lot of direct traffic. So that direct none traffic, again, from a bounce rate perspective, about the same engagement as general site traffic, right? So I don't see that it's any better. It's not any worse. Same thing with the Google organic. However, look at this problem child over here. Facebook paid traffic. This is the traffic that's coming from Facebook that's paid. 90% bounce, right? So very, very high, 3 times the average. So this traffic not sticking around. So what does that tell me? They're not engaging as much. Now, again, depends what this traffic was sent there to do. Doesn't mean they have to, maybe this traffic wasn't sent there to see other pages or anything else, but it does tell me there might be a problem here. I might need to work with our marketing team and say, why are we sending traffic and what's the expectation? Is the ad saying something, but we're not delivering the proper things on the other side, right? Maybe the old examples, like if you're selling, you say, hey, sweaters are on sale on Facebook. They click over and they see like lawn furniture on the website. It's like, well, that's weird, right? Doesn't match the expectation. Maybe that's happening here, right? These are conversations where I can work with our team to say, what's going on with this? Now, look at this. Does that mean Facebook's bad, right? Maybe not, because Facebook referral, that is Facebook traffic that others are sharing on our behalf, about same engagement as what the regular site is. So it kind of engages back to normal. So I can see the paid traffic is definitely the issue. It's not Facebook as a traffic source. It's the paid traffic coming from Facebook. It's part of the value of being able to see these different details here. And again, I'll show you how to get these in a few minutes here. Infusionsoft partner traffic, again, much more engaged, which is great. So our affiliates are sending us that. And if we keep going forward, right? So YouTube is a little bit more engaged than the average, et cetera. So that's how you kind of read these reports. You kind of read them vertically down, and you're comparing the different traffic sources to what the overall is, just to get an idea. It's like learning the personality type of a traffic source. And that's really how I think about it. It's like I'm learning the personality of how email works from Infusionsoft, or how organic traffic from Google works, or how shared traffic from YouTube works. So that's what these numbers will start to tell you. Start to get the understanding of what to expect this traffic to do, so that I can forecast what the traffic's going to do next week. So that's kind of engagement metrics. And again, pages per session and session duration, you use in the same way. They're just different forms of engagement. One tells you how many pages they're actually seeing in a visit. In Google Analytics, they call it a session, but it's just a visit. When the user visits your website, it's called a session. And so this tells us on average, they see about 1.5 pages. Now, email doesn't engage as much when it comes to session views. Direct none definitely does. They see a lot more pages. Google Organic does. Facebook certainly doesn't, right? Substantially lower. Facebook referral, though, look at that. It bounce rate's about average, but look at this, 2.5. So it's almost 3x with this, or twice as much as this, right? Not quite, but close. Where it's like, okay, they're really engaged. They're seeing more page views. That's really good. They should see what they're looking at. And then you can do the same thing with session duration. So overall, again, let's say 3 minutes, 30 seconds is kind of our benchmark. So then again, I don't care that it's 3 minutes. I don't actually think it's 3 minutes, right? I don't treat it like it's 3 minutes. It's just an idea. It kind of sets that benchmark. Then you compare all of these to that. So here it's like, okay, it's a little less. It's not sticking around as long, but remember, most emails are go accomplish this thing. And maybe that's all it is. So they don't need to. Direct none is definitely spending a bunch more time, right? Twice as long as what that is. So direct none, people that are coming looking for us, definitely more engaged in a lot of ways, right? Even though the bounce rate wasn't about average, we definitely saw more pages per session. They're spending more time reading those pages. It's pretty good for us to know. I can see the Google Organic is substantially higher, but then look again at Facebook CPC, how radically different this is. Basically nobody, they're just coming right off, right? They're really high bounce rate. They're not looking at a lot of pages and they're bouncing right back off. This campaign needs some help, right? Coming through. So then we can go through into Facebook referral. We see they're sticking around a little bit longer, but then the Infusionsoft partner traffic, right? Even though email sticks around, the partner traffic, not so much. Now remember, again, a partner traffic typically is doing some sort of promotional offer, so maybe that's okay. But it does give me an understanding of how these different traffic sources are working, and we haven't even gotten to the results yet. So I have an understanding of how much I'm getting from those traffic sources. And I have an understanding of how the traffic from those specific sources, how it's reacting differently on my site, the engagement that they have with my site. But I want to be able to tie it to results. So I can set up goals. I'm just going to keep it generic for now to show you this. So here we have different goals that are being achieved. Now, actually, I won't show you this because it'll, this is why you see when you do all goals, this is why you see like, oh, conversion rate's over 100%. How's that possible? Because it's all of the goals. So let's do one goal in particular. This is something we call the Measurement Marketing Academy. And we have a goal that is set up whenever anybody sees this page. So if I go into this particular page, this is like our membership site. So it trains people on Google Analytics and Tag Manager and everything else. So I measure for that result. I want to know which traffic sources are causing that result. So we set up a goal for that. Now remember, I'm still in the same source meeting report. We haven't left that report. I just flipped it to a goal that I already had created. So here I've got the Academy offer page goal. I'm just going to click here because it's going to sort the goals. So now that's kind of top down. So now I'm organizing it by traffic source. What's causing the goals coming through? Now, Facebook CPC seems to take the lead. It's got maybe not as many users. That's what it was sorted by, but it's definitely achieving more goals. It's getting people to see that page. However, when they see that page, they are bouncing right off it and they are not sticking around. They're not engaging with it at all. So this is important for us to know. So even though, yes, it's achieving, the goals that it's getting people aware of the Academy page. It's not necessarily doing the job in terms of selling them or getting them to engage. Now, that might be okay because this campaign might be designed just to make them aware of the Measurement Marketing Academy, not necessarily to sell it, but just to say, hey, do you have interest in something like this? If they do, maybe they go into a retargeting campaign that then continues the conversation on Facebook or other platforms. So it's not always a bad thing that these numbers are there, but it does help me understand. I didn't set up this campaign. I had nothing to do with this Facebook campaign. Our marketing team sets that up, but I can see the conversation that those users are having on our website because of these numbers, right? Because of these behaviors that are being represented by all these different numbers here. Now, direct none, you can see it's equally, from a numbers perspective, almost the same amount of people are seeing the Academy coming directly to learn more about measurementmarketing.io, right? It doesn't convert as much as this, but people that come directly maybe not always are trying to come in to see about the Academy. They want to learn about, the free toolbox membership or, me being on a podcast forum or something else. So there's all these other things that people would come in for, but it's pretty good, right? It's a good traffic source for us. Google Organic, This is a different mindset. People that are searching, they have a problem. They are on organic search, trying to solve their problem. They're typing in keyword queries, and they can come through also finding the academy, right? Pretty decent conversion rate. Overall, site-wide, 24% come through. Here, I can see 25, 20. It's pretty good, right? Facebook, definitely a lot more focused. That's why it's 3x when it comes to the conversion rate here, or practically that. But that's, again, doesn't quite get me the results that I might be looking for. But I can start to understand how things are working. Infusionsoft email. Remember, this is a really good traffic source, we thought, because it was highly engaged, which was awesome. However, look at the results. It gets a little bit, but for the numbers, it's a 7% conversion rate. Now, again, remember, that's because not every single email we send has anything to do with the Measurement Marketing Academy. Some are just for our members to go watch new videos or courses that we updated or whatever else comes through. So so some of those might not be designed to do that. So that might be okay. It doesn't mean it's a bad sign if it's lower. You have to think about, how is this traffic source supposed to work? And then is it doing the job I expect it to do? And this is how you learn that, right? You can see all of this. So in this one report, we've got the idea of the identity of what sent traffic. We have acquisition, which is all about how much of the users, how many users came from that traffic source. We have behavior, which is all about engagement. How engaged were they? You really start to understand a personality of traffic sources, or you see CPC traffic, not going to be as engaged, but it might be a lot more goal driven. And then we see the conversion stuff. This is the results of all of that traffic, but broken down by traffic source. So in this one report, you can see how easy it is, at least easier than maybe it was for you, to see what's back here and to maybe start taking some actions coming through. Now, how do we actually set this up? How do you actually get yours to look like this? Because yours may not look like this. You may not see Facebook CPC. You might not see YouTube share or anything like that. You might just see regular traffic sources. By regular traffic sources, I mean the default traffic sources that Google gives you. One of those default traffic sources is direct none. It is basically when somebody comes directly to your site, or, and this is mostly what it is, it tends to be people who haven't been, where Google just doesn't know they showed up. It's kind of a shorthand to think about. It's really how I think about it. It's like, I don't know, they just showed up. So I just had to call them direct none. I don't know where they came from. Now, again, sometimes that means somebody can go directly to your page, and that happens, especially if you can see here when I open up a new tab, and if I come into and I start typing, Chrome recognizes I've been there. I'm using Google Chrome. So Chrome recognizes I've been there, autofills it. So if I go, yeah, that's the site, and I hit enter, well, that would be an example of direct none. That's legitimately a direct none traffic source coming through because they came directly to my site. Google Analytics wouldn't know where they came from, so it goes, direct none. But sometimes it's email traffic. So if you're not what we call UTMing your emails, and I'll show you that in a second. If you're not seeing emails here, a lot of your direct none, especially if you do a lot of emails, it might be email traffic that's coming through. And it's Google doesn't know. Imagine if you're on Outlook and you click on an email, open Chrome, tab opens, load the page that email was sending you to. Well, to their Google Analytics, you just showed up. So that'll be direct none. But in reality, it was email. Right? And there's a way, we're going to show you how to do that. There's a way to actually identify that coming through. So that's why, again, direct none, how to think about it. It's just, they just showed up. It's untagged traffic. Sometimes that means they came directly to your site. The next type of traffic that Google Analytics will measure by default for you is organic. So that you see this little organic here. And what it does is say it's, the brand name of the search engine. So in this case, Google Organic, which of course for many of us will be the #1 organic source. I'm just going to use this little box up here. It's called a little filter box. So this filter box right up here, I'm going to type in the word organic so I can show you just organic traffic. So what it does, whenever you type something in this box here, it goes through this column and then just shows you only that stuff. So in this case for organic. So we're going to click the little search and we're going to see all the different organic sources, which for this date range was Google Organic. So I'm going to expand out the date range just a little bit so you can see other sources that came through. So if I scroll down, you see all the different search engines. Now remember, Google probably yours is going to look like this too. Google's pretty much the #1 out of 1,800, almost 2,000 users, almost all of them, 99.3% were from Google. However, we did have some from Bing coming in almost second, Baidu sending us some traffic, Yahoo search engine sending us some traffic, DuckDuckGo sending some traffic, and then ecosia.org sending us some traffic as well. So you have all these different search engines that are sending us traffic. Again, yours primarily will also be Google. That is the most useful one. But I wanted to show you that there are other search engines in the world. Just sometimes you don't see them all. So that's kind of what that looks like. All right. The other and the third, I'm going to go back to our smaller data set here. So it's a little bit faster for us on the webinar itself. The third type of traffic that Google Analytics will show you on its own. Remember, the first one was direct none, which is, I don't know, they just kind of showed up. There is organic, which is they came from a known search engine. Then there is this stuff called referral. You see like number 7 referral here. So I'm just going to type in referral. What referral means is referral is Google Analytics telling you they came from this other site. So I know it wasn't a search engine, or else I would have called it organic. I know they came from somewhere in this other site. And so it shows you the other sites. Now, again, social media, Facebook referral would be a big one, right? So we see Facebook referral traffic here. So what that means is somebody was on Facebook, clicked on a link that took them over to measuremarketing.io. So if you shared our page on your page, right, our measuremarketing.io website on your page, somebody clicks on it, it would come over to our site. That would be known as Facebook referral because Facebook referred that user over to our site. And that's how it would show up here, Facebook referral. Now you can also see other sites like seriouslysimplemarketing.com is sending us some traffic. There's SwipeFile sending us some traffic. We've got Social Media Examiner sending us some traffic. LinkedIn sends us some traffic, right? Another social media site during this little past week. So we can see these different traffic sources and how they're sending us traffic. So we can know, do we go back to them? Maybe somebody linked a blog post over to us. We can thank them. That's how you can use that. And we can build relationships with other people that are sending us users, right? So potentially as we go through. So that's referral traffic. And referral traffic really is that third default traffic source. It's the way that the third thing that Google Analytics will do on its own. So it'll do referral traffic, it will do organic traffic, and it will do the direct none traffic. It does that on its own. Everything else you see back here, Google CPC, MMIO/WW, Infusionsoft Partner, YouTube Share, Infusionsoft Email, Facebook CPC, all of those, that's stuff we put there. That's stuff we customized Google Analytics to make sure that Google Analytics would see that, and we identified the traffic source. We told Google Analytics they came from Infusionsoft Email. Now I'm going to show you, I'm going to do a little deep dive. Again, we're going to show about what's possible here, and then I'm going to show you how to do it. So in our Infusionsoft Email, I'm going to click into this. So if I go into Infusionsoft Email, and I'm going to do the same thing with Facebook so you can see the difference. This just shows that traffic source right now. I'm going to do a little feature called a secondary dimension. This is really going to help you fall in love with Google Analytics as you learn this fun stuff. Secondary dimension. We click on this. I'm going to type in campaign. So when I do that, what's going to happen is going to be a second column. It's going to show my Infusionsoft email, and then it's going to show the purpose of the emails. In our case, the product or service that it was there to help promote, right? So if I click on this, you can see it'll break this down by a little bit. You can see there's some Measure Summit traffic coming through for Measure Summit, another event that we run. We have Infusionsoft email traffic that was for the purposes of Academy, to promote the Academy, the Measurement Marketing Academy. This is for some of our member emails for adjustments of the preferences of the toolbox, or for another program we have called certification for those that want to be certified measurement marketers. Now, why is this useful? Because remember when we said, oh, that email traffic isn't really converting for Academy, that offer page? Well, here I go, well, this traffic, this Academy traffic should be, let's pretend, should be sent for the Academy. So this is where I look at and say, okay, remember before it was 7, but 11% is actually converting. But here I see this toolbox traffic is really doing it, right? 46% conversion rate. So this particular campaign is doing a much better job about making people aware of the Measurement Marketing Academy. And I get to go back and say, what did that campaign look like? Out of those emails, can we maybe take some of that magic we learned down here and apply it to the emails in this campaign? So that's how, again, from a marketing perspective, I can improve things. Now, the other thing I'm going to show you here is something, there's other things you can see. I'm going to type in content, and again, I'll show you how to get all this in there, but I wanted to show you why you do all of this. So in the content section, this is going to look a little wonky. This is a bunch of numbers here, right? Well, we put all these numbers here. These mean something to us. So this tells us the campaign ID in our email system, and then it tells us the exact email in that campaign that's sending traffic. So if you've ever asked the question like, gee, I wonder if it's the 4th email they bought from or the 7th email in our autoresponder they bought from, this is how you can tell, because it's all in here. And we can, of course, tie it back down to results. So I can see that it was this specific campaign, and look what we did here. We even know it was the PS link that they clicked on. The link in the PS of the email is really the one that was converting to get people to go to the Academy. That's helpful to know, because now that helps us to write copy for future emails and adjust our email design, because we know the conversation that our users are having with the website, with our marketing, right? So this is what we can really, I'm still on the same report. I haven't moved anywhere in Google Analytics. It's still the source media report. You can see how much you can learn from this. Now I'm going to go back and we're going to do it with Facebook. So I'm going to click up at the top here where it says all, and this just brings us back to the very top list of all of these different traffic sources coming through. So we see everybody's traffic source again. I'm going to click where it says Facebook CPC. Now this is our ad campaign. Remember, this is the paid traffic that we're running from Facebook. So I just clicked on it to isolate it. So it's just that. Now I'm going to do a secondary dimension, and I'm going to do that content one again, because this one's going to look a little different. So if I type in content and then click here, it says add content. Now what it'll show, it'll break it down again, and I start to see some other interesting details. Now this isn't a bunch of numbers because numbers weren't useful for us back there. We didn't need to know the location of an ad or whatever else. So instead what we saw was we put in these different details. So this one was where we were targeting a group who were interested in the Measurement Marketing Academy. This is a retargeting campaign to do that. These were people who were already introduced to our brand. They already were on one of our Measurement Marketing.io pages, so we know that. We are retargeting them for the purchase reason, right? To actually achieve a purpose of a purchase here. So this one, again, this one was people that were offsite. So they were aware of us by some other brand, and we're targeting them to be introduced to our brand. So they don't have anything to do with the Academy. We're not supposed to be sending them to the Academy, right? The Academy interest, again, is designed to get people interested in the Academy. This one, just designed to introduce them to our brand, maybe a blog post or something like that it sent traffic to. So we can see all of these different details, how our social media is designed to work, and then did it work over here. So I can see those different details because of what I'm about to show you now, which is UTMs. So UTMs. Now I'm going to go into, first, we're just going to Google URL builder. Okay. This is going to be a pretty simple thing. All of you can do. I like doing things that everybody has access to. When you Google URL builder, you will see this thing pop up first, campaign URL builder for Google Analytics. So we click here. Now what this does, this is going to show you the idea of how this works. So if I want to send somebody to our homepage, again, normally homepages aren't a great option, but let's pretend I wanted to. So I'm going to send them to the homepage of measurementmarketing.io. So I want to send them to the homepage. Now let's pretend for a moment that I'm sending them, this is like a Facebook ad that I'm doing. So in that case, the source would be Facebook. So that's the brand name of the traffic source. That's how you think about it. It's the brand name of the traffic source, Facebook. Medium is the type of traffic coming from Facebook. Now, if I am just posting this on our page and I'm not going to boost it, you can call that social, right? We actually call it share. And that just tells us internally that we didn't put money behind this. If we're going to do it as an ad, we will call it CPC, cost per click for paid. So we know it's paid traffic coming through. And that's why it shows Facebook CPC there. We know we spent money for that. If we saw Facebook share, it'd be things we didn't spend money for. So I'm going to keep it paid traffic for now, because we're in our hypothetical example that we did that. Then there's the campaign name. So remember, first is the campaign source. That is the brand name of your traffic source. Medium is the type of traffic coming from that source. Campaign name is the product or service. It's the purpose. Why are you sending that traffic over to your site? What are they supposed to do? So in our case, I might say, oh, this is for the Academy. This is what we call it. We don't type in Measurement Marketing Academy as a company. We just call it Academy when we're doing this, and everybody uses the same campaign. So we can all kind of keep everything nice and united. So we see Facebook CPC, so it's paid traffic coming from Facebook for the purposes of the Academy journey, for that customer journey through hopefully purchasing the Measurement Marketing Academy. Then you have term and content. This is where you can put in other cool stuff. Like maybe I put in the headline goes here. I could put a headline of the ad if I wanted to see that. I could also put in other differentiators, like this is the audience that I'm targeting, right? So I could say people, this is an audience that's being retargeted. And I can put that in through here, and it might be previous buyers or whatever the audience is, just to help us understand a little bit more around this specific ad. So the click that they clicked on that brought them over, we would know all this information about it. And again, that tells us what the purpose was, right? What we expected was going to happen, what we forecasted was supposed to happen. And then we can measure against and see, did this campaign achieve the results? Using this little thing called UTMs. Now, why do I keep calling them UTMs? Because if we scroll down here, you'll see what's been happening. This has been building. There's our homepage, measurementmarketing.io. Just grabbed it from here. That's it. Then it did UTM underscore source, a little question mark up here, but it says UTM underscore source brand name equals Facebook. That's how Facebook shows up in Google Analytics. UTM underscore medium CPC. That's how it shows Facebook CPC, because now that medium's been pushed in there. UTM campaign equals academy. That's how academy showed up there. And then et cetera, et cetera. How we got content to show up there is because this UTM underscore content that's here. Now, you don't have to fill this form out for every single thing. I only offer this to you because it gets you used to it if you've never used these before. But you just need to copy it out, and then you paste it in and test it. Always test it. Now, this would be what I would link my Facebook ads to. There's also a place in Facebook where you can, in the ads manager, where you can just copy these out. It's going to ask you, what are the URL parameters that you put in there? Just paste them out. You don't need the question mark. You just copy these out, and then you paste them in your Facebook ad, and it'll be there. If I was sharing this on my Facebook page and I wasn't going to boost this, I could just change this to share. I don't have to change the form. I just change the values. You see what it says share now. I just changed it up here in the URL. So you can do that. You can just type this stuff in. Most of the time, I just type in this stuff in because I'm so used to it now. But I could actually just copy this entire thing, drop it into Facebook. I could wait for that little preview to happen where Facebook grabs it and previews it. Then I can delete the link out of the text. That preview stays there because it's got the hyperlink now, and it's UTM'd. So if anybody clicked on my preview on that image for that post, it would be UTM'd. It would have that. Now, again, what does UTM'd mean? Watch what happens when I click over here. So I'm just going to, and I kept it as share. So now it says Facebook share. I'm testing it. Always test it. Never do it just in case you typed it in wrong. And I can see it's Facebook share. So what do I expect is going to happen? If I come into my Google Analytics, I'm going to flip into one of our testing views here so we can see ourselves. So I'm going to go into the real-time reports. This is another set of reports. This is really the only time we're leaving the source medium right now. So I'm going to go into our real-time reports, and we're going to take a look, and we're going to see. So I'm going to go in real-time. I go to traffic sources. And when I click there, I can see Facebook share. That is how I can see if this thing is working or not. So Facebook share. So UTMs are really, really simple to use. They are something that you need to be aware of. Maybe that was your one thing that you, in fact, you even can do things like this. But maybe the one thing is like, what are the things that I can use UTMs for? You can use them for paid traffic, obviously. You can use them for anything you're sharing on social media, especially when you're trying to, if you want to see if the LinkedIn post worked better than the Facebook post. One could be LinkedIn share. The other one could be Facebook share. And then you can compare the two, right? So you'll be able to see all of that. You can also do it for things that are, what I'd call maybe old school social media, like this event. Now, I'm going to put this into chat. This is going to show you a technique at the same time that it shows you UTM. So I'm putting this in chat. It's measure.tips/meet Edgar. So I'm going to have everybody that's here click on that link. You do not have to opt in. It's going to take you to the page to opt in, but you don't have to do it. I just want to show you how this is working. So it's measure.tips/meet Edgar. And this is both a technique as well as UTM. So you can see how UTMs are going. So this takes us to the free Toolbox membership. Anybody here, you have access to this toolbox, just name an email and you'll get it. There's a traffic tracking toolkit that talks all about this. There's a whole ebook, there's a video, everything else that trains you on UTM. So you can have access to that. The reason I wanted you to show it is because we happen to have enough people here live. See this? So I can see Meet Edgar is the source of the traffic. It's a Meet Edgar training webinar right now. It's a type of traffic called webinar, because that's what we call these online trainings. So I can then see Meet Edgar sent, in this case, 35 users through the webinar that came through. So that's what's really cool about this, right? Coming through, I can see this stuff. And it's for the purposes of eventually, hopefully you become Measurement Marketing Academy members. You don't have to, obviously, but that's the idea. That's the purpose, is to, get you introduced to that. So I can see, does Meet Edgar traffic work the way I need it to? And so when people think about social media, it's super important. Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, all the big ones, right? That are out there, Instagram, everything else, Pinterest. But there's other ways that you can use UTMs, like for podcasts, right? So if I come through here, I'm going to go into back to our source medium report, and I'm going to pull up podcast traffic. So how do I measure podcast traffic? I do it the same way that you just saw, which is I use a redirect. So it's just a little redirect you can put UTMs on. So that little Meet Edgar, short link that we did, if I type in podcast, you will see here, There's Social Media Examiner's podcast that sent us some traffic the last couple of days. A podcast I did like a year ago over at Dude Agency sent us the traffic, sent us a user. JetRail sent us a user recently. The SOW, which is another podcast, Steal Our Work podcast that came through. So that one is there, or Steal Our Winners, excuse me, is what that stands for. So there's another podcast that sent us traffic. So I can see podcast as a channel pretty decent, right? So I can see the type of traffic called podcast traffic is pretty good. If I want to see how webinars like this do, I can just type in webinar and see how all my webinars are doing and tie them to results coming through. So it's really cool what you can do with the source media report. And this is what helps you fall in love with Google Analytics, because it becomes this immensely helpful friend that will just tell you what's going on. Here's the conversation this traffic source is having with your website. Here's the results from this traffic source. Is it what you wanted? If so, great, go get more of it. If not, maybe you want to optimize a few things. And here's some information you might use to be able to do that. So it's really cool what you can do with this. And that's just the UTMs. Now, the last thing that I'm going to leave you with, and what I'm about to talk about is also in the toolbox. If you get the free account, it is ACE goals. So right here, it says using Google Analytics to ace your goals. And you saw us do this. So again, this is in the tech world, they call it eating your own dog food. And we definitely do. So I'm going to go back into our production view, right? One of the views that we use to get our answers. That's what we call production views. So in here, we can see in our goals that we're here, we see the Academy offer that was here. I'm going to exit out of this so we don't look at just podcast traffic. We're looking at all the traffic again, just for the last 7 days, make it a little easier to read everything. So I'm going to flip our date range up there. Always important to verify your date range. Make sure you're looking and comparing apples to apples. Sometimes people set stuff up and then forget to change the date range, so it's not there. So you see here where it says Academy offer. So that is when people see, if I go back to our Academy page, that is when they see this page, the Measurement Marketing Academy. That is the awareness stage. So what I'm about to talk about is something called the ACE model. And setting goals itself, really not that hard. You can Google, YouTube. It's easy to find people that say, oh, here's how to set up a goal in Google Analytics. What's hard is like, what should a goal be? Like what, how do you think about it? What should I even make a goal? So the model is called ACE. So A stands for awareness. So in this case, the customer journey that we would measure for is the awareness of this page. We're even aware that we had a Measurement Marketing Academy. So when somebody comes to this page, it triggers that awareness goal. So I can come down here and see this and load this up. Now they're aware of our page. So that's first thing. Now, of course, the big step after awareness is, okay, are they aware of the thing? Did they complete the thing I wanted them to complete? So we've set up another goal, and you see this little 3, 2, 1 thing that we have here. So the third thing here, this is our purchase. So did they actually buy? That is when they arrive on the thank you page, right? So we can see the thank you page that's showing up for the Academy. And so that tells us that. And we can tie it, of course, down to traffic sources. Which traffic sources are really good about making people aware of the Academy? Which traffic sources are really good about having people complete the Academy? A lot of times they're not the same traffic source. And if we know that, we can use one traffic source for awareness because it's really good at that. And then we can go back to the other traffic source and then use that just to complete and through retargeting or some other means, because it's really good at that. And we can complete the journey, right? So this ACE model, ACE, A is awareness. C is, did they complete the journey that you wanted to complete? E stands for engagement along the way. So in the example of the Academy, the way that we would measure engagement, like, okay, it's one thing to know that you're aware. It's, of course, another thing to know if they completed the journey and they bought the thing, but how many people started the journey along the way? So that's engagement. So we might come through here and say, okay, well, if they click onto the cart page, right? So when they click on the cart page, different page, but now they've engaged in the customer journey. So awareness, were they aware of the thing? Did they complete the thing? Did they engage with the journey, right? The thing that you wanted to do, did they engage with it? So we can measure for that. So I can see my purchase goals here. I can also see the cart, which is our engagement step, right? ACE, aware, complete, engage. So here's engagement. And I can just click up here, same way I did before with the offer page. And I can see, okay, here's how many people engaged. These are the traffic sources that are good at getting people to engage with the Academy. These are the traffic sources that are good about getting people to become aware of the Academy. And I can, again, click here just to kind of sort goals down, top down. So you can see traffic sources, really good at getting them aware, really good at getting them to engage, and ultimately which ones are really good about getting them to purchase, and it's always remember to click on this to sort those goals going down. So you see your traffic sources going top down. And again, you learn so much. Imagine if you do this for just a few minutes a day, how much more you would learn from your Google Analytics, how much more of a best friend Google Analytics would be for you. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Hopefully you're thinking about many one things. I would love to see in chat those of you that had any epiphanies where you're like, that was a cool way of thinking about that, or I didn't realize I could even do that, or maybe what your next step is going to be when you think about, okay, this is my one thing. I'm going to go practice this thing. So when we talk about that, when you think about your one things, remember we talked about measurement marketing. That's the mindset of measurement marketing. It's a process of listening and responding. The reason you measure is because you want to listen to the conversation. You'd never talk to your friend and ignore them. You would never not listen to your friend in a conversation, and you would never do that in the real world when when somebody's in your offline store. If they came into your store, you would never ignore your customers. But if you don't measure things, then you are kind of deaf to that conversation. So we want to make sure that we're not that. You always want to measure, listen, and respond. We talked about the framework. Really, that was two parts. First was the pillars: plan, build, then report. Then you forecast what your future is going to be. So you're always asking yourself, you see me use that technique a little bit. I'm like, here's what I expect to happen. Did it happen? And then you optimize, right? You measure against your forecast. That's what will tell you what's working and what's not. Remember, in that planning stage, you think about the questions you're trying to answer, the information that you will need to get those answers, and most importantly, the actions you will take to get those once you get the answers, right? The actions you're going to take once you get the answers. That's an important one too, because if somebody comes to you and say, I need a report that shows me this, this, and this, just ask them, oh, that's great. I'll definitely do that. Let me just to make sure you get what you need. What actions are you planning to take based upon an answer? Can you kind of work me through what you want it to look like? And then you start giving them reports they're actually going to use versus like spending a lot of time on reports they never look at. So very important thing when you go to plan. We also talked about in that framework, the idea that you're going to improve as you ask bigger questions. You're on a journey. You're going to start off in the cave. We all do. Then you're the valley of visibility. Then you're going to go into the hills, then ultimately the summit, then the next summit, the next summit, the next summit. There's always more things to do. But you're on a journey. You will always ask bigger questions. And as you ask bigger questions, you might need to improve your skills a little bit, your implementation a little bit to get answers to those bigger questions. But start with where you are. Don't worry about somebody else is and the questions they're asking may not be the questions that you're asking or that you're even able to answer at this point in your journey. Finally, we talked about traffic and results. And really, that was two key things. Source media report. I mean, come on, let's hear it for the source media report. That thing does a lot of work. We didn't have to go anywhere else in Google Analytics. We got a lot of answers. We got an understanding of the personalities of the traffic sources. Like, this is why I love Google Analytics. I clearly have fallen in love with Google Analytics because of this. But we talked about these two main ideas of UTMs when you're tracking traffic using UTMs. And we talked about ACE goals. So not just setting up goals, because that's kind of like, yeah, of course you want to set up goals. What should a goal be? Use that ACE model. Aware of the journey. Did they complete the journey? What did they complete? Did they engage along the way? Because that helps you tell the story of which traffic sources are really good at what. And that helps you, of course, optimize those traffic sources for your results. Now, of course, we talked about Measurement Marketing Toolbox. You saw the Meet Edgar link. It was also just a cool technique. It's nice when I have a live webinar, so everybody can click on that and see it, because you can see UTMs in action and you can see how we're doing it. You can see how you could do it and say, oh, I can just redirect somebody. And all I did was set up the redirect with UTMs at the end of it. So when you click the link, it redirects to the page with UTMs. That's how I know what's working or what's not. And this isn't otherwise a very hard thing to measure. It would be direct traffic. So, that's what brought you to the toolbox page. Again, completely free. Those of you who didn't click on a link, need it later, that's okay. Measure.tips/Meet Edgar is what will take you there. And again, if nothing else, it's an example of seeing UTMs in action. Go like, oh, okay, look in the URL. Also, look in your emails. When you click on your email links, you'll see other people using UTMs and you'll see like, oh, okay, that's what they've been doing all this time, right? You can see all of that. All right. In terms of next steps, obviously you want to go ahead and get your free Toolbox membership if you haven't already. If you have any questions, I'm happy to address them if we have time here in chat. Otherwise, email me. Mercer@measurementmarketing.io is my email. It goes directly to me. Might take me a little bit to respond back to you because I do get a lot, but I'm happy to help out with whatever I can. Again, Mercer@measurementmarketing.io. Or of course, if you just want to learn more about measurement marketing in general, measurementmarketing.io is our website. And you can go directly there if you want, measurementmarketing.io. That will show up as direct traffic. So, but that's how it works, measurementmarketing.io. So with that, I will go ahead and bring it officially to a close. And thanks for watching Falling in Love with Google Analytics. Megan?
I know I was taking so many notes, guys.
Muted.
We will go ahead and send out the replay in the next couple of hours here. So if you guys do have questions or if you don't see it, email support@meetedgar.com. Thank you so much,
Perfect.
Chris.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm seeing chat. Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. This was awesome.